Hey everyone, I hope you've had a great day so far and that you're doing well. For this video we'll be going through a unboxing and review of Studio Series Voyager Soundwave, and this is number 83 of the Studio Series line. And this particular version of Soundwave is from the Transformers Bumblebee live action movie. And as for when this was released, I believe it was early part of 2022. And you might still be able to find him at domestic retail, subject to where you are in the world. So moving into the remaining Decepticon contingent from the Transformers Bumblebee movie, there's a few left to still do. There's at least Soundwave, there's at least Starscream, Thundercracker, Thrust may not be done anytime soon, and I'm still hoping to find some of the other deluxes. So here we are. Probably just maybe 6 or 7 figures away from completely wrapping up all the relative figures from the Transformers Bumblebee movie, and in time for Rise of the Beasts, which I've been trying to do in parallel. Anyway, front of the box of Soundwave. So we have a nice shot of Soundwave there. Here's CGI art, and it does look very, very impressive. I will admit, I think the Decepticons were very lucky with their movie designs, as were the Autobots. And there we have Soundwave himself, and because it was released back in 2022, we very much still have plastic window. Otherwise, pretty much stock standard boxing for Soundwave. So another shot of his head, figure 83, well, release 83, another shot there. In terms of the back, Soundwave in his robot mode and his alt mode, which I'm assuming is some type of Cybertronian flight form of something. 29 steps of conversion, which actually isn't too bad for a Voyager. We do have an included backdrop, which to be honest is pretty much the same backdrop for most Cybertronian either Autobot or Decepticon releases from the Bumblebee movie. And in terms of the little flavor text, what do we have here? The fate of Cybertron is sealed as Soundwave orders the Decepticons to launch a final attack, causing the Autobots to fall back. And as I've mentioned a few times, a very nice scene to watch from the movie. This should definitely be very interesting to see how Soundwave is, but definitely digging his look. So that's the box. Time to open up the box, have a better look at Soundwave, see what he's like in his robot mode, his alt mode, and all the good stuff. And with Soundwave out of his packaging, what do we have? So we have 2 accessories, his little shoulder one and a handheld weapon. We have Soundwave himself, who actually feels quite sturdy, which is very cool. Very nice looking. Definitely very nice looking. And his manual, which looks like will actually be a few pages worth. So pretty much the standard inclusions. Now before we get too carried away, in terms of backdrop, and it has been a while since I've actually toyed around with a Voyager figure. Soundwave in his backdrop. Granted, he's just very static and stationary right now, but definitely not too bad looking. The white on the figure definitely does help bring him out from the backdrop. So, granted, it should already be up by the time this video goes live, but there should be a few preview pictures of Soundwave against this backdrop ahead of this unboxing, when the time comes. So that is that. So Soundwave, let's put you back down here in terms of the manual. So for 29 steps, it's somewhat involved. A few quick steps on arming Soundwave while he's in his robot mode. Now surprisingly enough, there are actually 20 steps on this side of the manual, and they do stretch through the concertina form very much. His underbelly will definitely look interesting when the time comes, but there you go. So that's 20 steps. In terms of the remaining 9, definitely not as bad looking on the other side. It's just pretty much finalizing his alt mode and attaching both his accessories. So you'll be able to store those in his Cybertronian. As I said, I assume it's a flight form. And it actually doesn't look too bad. Now, the reason why his instructions are somewhat more sizable is there are some steps on how to integrate Ravage. And this is the core class Ravage, which I will post a card to. It's been some time since I looked at Ravage. So the first part of it is just how to actually insert Ravage into Soundwave's chest, a la G1 being a cassette of some description. So that is very cool. That's a very nice gimmick. And then lastly, some of the accessories on Ravage can also basically attach to Soundwave's existing weapon as well. So that will actually give it a very nice little G1 inspired look. Granted, that was more for his hand weapon as opposed to his shoulder, but either way, the inspiration is very nice to see. So that is his manual. I will probably need that when the time comes. So, Soundwave, before we get too carried away, so you'll have 2 ports here at the back to attach his over the shoulder component. So I would just pick this one. It does seem to tab in quite nicely. So there you go, a very iconic Soundwave look. And then lastly, just put his blaster in this hand if I can get in. There we go. And there we go, Soundwave with his handheld weapon and his over the shoulder cannon slash something else. But he does look very, very cool. And I do quite like, you know, the fact that there's a lot of G1 inspiration in his design as well. So that is Soundwave with his weapons attached. Now, given that he does have that extra tab here, there's probably reasonable degree of assumption that this will also tab into that if you wanted to store it on his back. The manual doesn't suggest that you can do that, but it fits a tab, so if you want to store it when he's in robot mode, there you go. So that is Soundwave. Now, we'll take that off for the time being. We'll revisit that main weapon in your alt mode. So, Soundwave. Soundwave from the front, the side, hopefully, the back, the other side, and a nice close-up on head, torso. So your head looks very, very nice. Very, very cool indeed. And in fact, we do have some more detailing down here in the lower waist torso as well. So in terms of colors, so Soundwave being Soundwave is very much his traditional dark blue, which is looking very good on him. We do have this white here as well to help break things up, and it does break things up very nicely. A little bit of red paint work just to add a bit of color, a bit of gold down here on the feet, a bit on the chest as well. Likewise, the red on his eye visor, and his head does have a bit more of the silver and dark silver to break things up, as does some of his lower waist. And we do get to see bits of dark grey as well on various joint areas. So color wise, Soundwave looks really, really cool. I quite like the colors. They all work very well. And it's the right shade of blue as well. Not that there's ever been a wrong shade of blue for Soundwave. It's usually quite consistent, but it suits him very well. I will say, so nice to not have any back kibble there. So nice. Before I get too carried away with the articulation, as we know from the little note about Ravage, similar to his G1 toy. In fact, I'll just do that with his item. There's a little button here which will open up his chest cavity, and if I had Ravage out, we would do it, but I'll probably do it for the short. Ravage will go in there, and then that will close back up. So that is very cool. It's unfortunate that Ravage wasn't included, but oh well. Guess that was an extra way to milk some extra money between having a Voyager Soundwave and a core Ravage. Okay, so articulation. What do we have? The head will move a full 360. It does have a bit of tilt up, can tilt down a little bit. So overall, posing that head for different dynamic poses will be pretty much not a problem at all, which is very cool. So even if his little shoulder thing is down, it won't impact the movement for the head too much. It's very cool. On that note, this does have a bit of a articulated point there as well, so it can move up and down, which is very cool. As for the arm, we'll have to do the arm over here. Not that the other arm would be encumbered by that. The arm can do a full 360 around at the shoulder, since there's nothing to block it. It can go like that. Obviously it can go to the front given the 360. Can do the back once again because of that 360. Now these panels they're not loose, but just because of how they work, you can unintentionally lift them up in the shoulder, but it's not too bad. But just be mindful when you hold them, just to hold them like that, otherwise you will lift up a panel. In terms of the arm, so we do have a swivel up here at the upper arm, which is very cool. In terms of elbow, we do have probably a standard 90 degree there. Can go a little, well, actually no, take that back. There's no real back. It's pretty much just your forward. Now it does look like it could be a dual elbow with an upper elbow and a lower elbow. So if I was to do that, that's using the lower part of the elbow, but it does seem to lock it in a bit. So there's definitely elbow there, but depending if you use the top bit or the bottom bit of the elbow joint, will minimize some of your dynamic posing. No, it's okay. His lower arm is fairly solid, so there's no swivel or anything there, unfortunately. As for his hands, ooh, hands are fixed, unfortunately. So there's no movement in the hands, but still, between the shoulders, the elbows, some of that free range of movement, I'd say the arms overall are pretty good. There is a bit of waist swivel, but depending how much swivel you do, his top waist section will unfortunately lift up. So you can do some, but I think the recommendation would be for the extreme swivel. That is what Soundwave will start to look like. As for his upper legs, for the most part, almost a full split, almost. So we know leg can go all the way that way, leg can go all the way to the back, and because of that, front skirting will only go that much to the forward. So it's definitely not a bad thing, because how often do you need to bring the leg that far up unless you're doing a really front kick? Now, if you move the skirting, then yes, I can go all the way up. So, subject to what you're doing will dictate how much of that skirting you may or may not need to move. Do we have swivel at the upper leg? Yes, we do. I mean, we've got a bit of swivel at the thigh as well, so just be careful with that. Now that's not going to be a full 360 swivel, just because of some of this outer armouring here. So you definitely have some, but unlike the one up here at the top of the arm, it's not going to be a full 360. Now, as for the knee bend, so that's leg fully out. That's your standard knee bend. Are you a double knee? Ever so slightly, but because the lower leg has some decent bulk to it, I don't think you can really use the second knee bend to full effect, but you do get the normal main knee bend there with no problems. There's no swivel at the lower leg, which is fine, wouldn't expect too much. As for the feet, well, have 360 rotation at the top of the foot, which is very cool, and you also have up and down with the feet as well, so getting some interesting footwork won't be a problem for Soundwave. Speaking of footwork, are you going to stand on your own 2 feet completely unaided? Yes, you will. So that is a look at Soundwave in his robot mode. It's very sturdy. The joints are all really good, even after a year, almost a year and a half of being in his box. Nothing feels overly loose. Articulation potential is there. Obviously has some nice accessories. The extra gimmick with Ravage is very cool, and it's also good that it has been included. So overall, I am actually quite happy with Soundwave's robot mode. So now that we've had a look at the robot mode, it's time to go through the 29-step conversion, see what his alt mode is like. And then after that, do some final thoughts and close off the video. And with Soundwave now transformed, it did take a little bit longer than I expected. I did also have to do a bit of a backpedal because I did a slight boo-boo. So the slight boo-boo I did was just with those upper shoulder pads of his. There's an extra layer of movement in them, because what had happened before was Soundwave's head is basically right here. In fact, if we flip him over, there's the back of his head. And before I realized the shoulder pads had that extra level of movement, Soundwave's head was just literally sticking out there for everyone to see. And I thought, seems quite clunky. What have I missed? But anyway, that's just my little interesting tidbit about the transformation. So here we have Soundwave in his flight form. So that's pretty much from the top, the bottom, which just basically looks like Soundwave has just done some weird things with his legs and his arms. Both his weapons have been attached as well. I guess from the front, the side, the rear, the other side. So yes, he will look better at certain angles and not so good on others. So I do apologize if it's pretty much just going to be looking quite flat. I mean, he does actually have some angling here with his legs to give him a bit more of a more interesting silhouette. It's just obviously with some of the angles and things like that, it's not that easily identifiable. So from an alt mode perspective, it's definitely different. I mean, it's probably not surprising that he's some type of flight type alt mode, hovercraft, something along those lines. He could be a tank, for all I know. But yeah, it's still a very nice and unique looking design. His blue is very much prevalent through and through. We do get some of the white here at the front, a bit on the sides and the rear, and some of this red throughout, as well as some of this gold to help just offset some of that blue. So overall, it's not a bad look, and it's nice to have some of these extra bits of color just to break up some of that blue. Now, what else to say? I mean, there's definitely no articulation here. I mean, he's just pretty much, he's almost just like a flying disc, really. But that's okay. So, colors looks pretty good. I mean, it's still a very nice looking alt mode, and I'll definitely have to try and get some pictures of it to try and do it a bit more justice. In terms of the transformation, it wasn't too bad. I mean, I've mentioned that little interesting tidbit about just making sure you've positioned the shoulder pads in that extra step. I was a bit dubious with the legs and some of the connectivity, but it's definitely not too bad. So it does have some tabbing. The arms will tab into his side, which is very nice. And then his feet also have a tab into his arms to try and lock everything together. There's also some tabbing here as well. But his transformation, I thought, the actual process of folding out panels and things like that was quite good and intuitive. The tabbing and how it's all come together is probably not too bad. I think if I knew about the shoulder thing better, probably wouldn't have taken as long. But live and learn, should hopefully make future transformations a bit quicker now that I know what to expect. So I think at 29 steps for a Voyager, despite the sizing, there's a little bit of a playability there with transformation, which isn't too bad. Obviously, looking at Soundwave from the underbelly does look quite weird. Not quite the Gundam syndrome where it's like a Gundam bent over to do a flight form, but we're getting there. So that is Soundwave's alt mode. So overall, definitely not too bad, definitely unique. And yeah, I'll definitely have to see if I can try and get some pictures to do it a little bit more justice. Final thoughts on Soundwave. So his robot mode, if I was going to be really critical, the elbows, the waist, and the knees. Yes, they're articulated, but they're not very fluidic, I think is probably what I'm trying to think of. You can definitely use them, but especially using the waist as a good example, gets to a point where to enable the movement you've done something to make it visually look a little bit clunky. That's if I wanted to be really critical about the robot mode. I think he'll be fine to do a lot of decent dynamic poses and things like that. So overall, I quite like Soundwave's robot mode. The look is where it needs to be, the colors are great, he does feel very solid and sturdy, he does still have a wide range of articulation in his various joints, so really I can't actually really say anything bad about the robot mode. The extra gimmick for Ravage is also really cool, so overall, robot mode, very solid. And I also suspect if I was to put him on a shelf, he'll probably be in his robot mode. As for his vehicle mode, it's an interesting take. It is Cybertronian in general design, so it's obviously taken one side step out of the normal conventional type design book. It's definitely not too bad looking, but I would probably say of all the Cybertronian modes between Decepticons and the Autobots, I feel Soundwave's it's not terrible in any shape or form, but it'll definitely be the most unique of all the Cybertronian alt modes. But it does still look very cool because of that same uniqueness, and because it's still quite blue with his color scheme and with enough dashes of color, it does look very interesting to look at. So overall, it's not a bad alt mode, but I think Soundwave has more value in his robot mode than his alt mode. But at the same time, at least it's an alt mode where you can attach weapons and it actually doesn't look that bad. Which is once again one of the few things I like about all the Cybertronian alt modes. It just looks more natural for some weird bizarre reason. Overall, I would probably very solidly recommend Soundwave as a acquisition for the collection, irrespective of whether you're a Puritan Decepticon collector, you're a Soundwave collector. I think he's just a really solid addition to any collection. For the points I made about his robot mode being really, really good, everything that you want is there. Transformation is still quite fun and enjoyable for some playability, and even if you do periodically put them all in their ultimates, it's not bad. And I'm sure once I finish all of the unboxings and reviews and try and get them all together, I will try and do a Cybertronian based image set. Granted, that's only really with what? Thundercracker, Starscream, Thrust, and Soundwave, but it's not bad. I will admit I do look forward to looking at the Seekers. Hopefully that won't be a bad experience. So I'm going to leave it there for the unboxing and review of Voyager Class Studio Series Soundwave. Yeah, I've definitely enjoyed doing the unboxing and review. Some things took a bit longer than I expected, but that's okay. But yes, it's definitely nice for him to be out of the box now. And I do regret not having Ravage available for this, but I'll try and make that up with some shorts. Which, if you're still watching, hopefully that has already happened. Thank you very much for watching this unboxing and review video. Feel free to leave a like or comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. All of this does help support the channel, and I do greatly appreciate it. Extra content can also be found on my Instagram accounts. Link is in the description, and as I usually do, there'll be some supplementary shorts and stuff in the community tab. There'll definitely be more shorts as time goes on once I've come close to wrapping up all of the Transformers Bumblebee stuff, so I can do some more group shorts and things like that, like I did with Beast Wars. With that being said, stay safe and take care. I will catch you hopefully in next week's usual Friday video, which will be another Decepticon unboxing and review. I'll probably lean towards Starscream, but time will tell. Otherwise, there's still plenty of other Transformer content being posted to the channel from Rise of the Beasts, and I'm still sprinkling some non-Transformers content here and there as well. So hopefully there's something to strike your fancy. Until the next time.